Hi, everybody, and welcome to Paranormal or Metaphysical Insights. Okay, my brain is fried already, and we're just starting. My guest today is the amazing Mr. Barry Fitzgerald. I've gotten to know Barry a bit personally, and the work he does is beyond incredible in my mind. I run out of words to explore it and explain. And I'm going to let him talk about what his recent projects are. I mean, because they keep expanding, there are new things coming up all the time. And part of what I like about Barry's work is he doesn't come from a preconceived notion. He does the research well, and there are so many things that he's disproved at great, actually, risk. I'm thinking of some of the videos like in South America and such, um,
Mhm, mhm.
and even in Antarctica. And it's it shows part of the credibility that he's looking for true answers, not to verify something that somebody else has come up or thought, oh, this is some wonderful mystery. And
Mhm.
I'm going to stop talking and welcome you, Barry. It's great to see you, and
Thank you, William.
welcome.
Thank you, and it's a great pleasure to be here, and it's a great pleasure to see you again.
Thank
It's
you.
been a few years since we have walked side by side in Ireland,
Yep,
and I look forward to it again.
I do too. I do too. And if we get comments that show up, I can click on them, and so you can see them.
That's grand.
And basically, I mean, we could spend the whole show going over background and everything, but and why you got and stuff. But what are you up to? What are you doing? I don't know if I can talk about what I just read or not, but eh, I'm excited. So give us break in with some of your projects here and where you're going with it.
Well, I just finished a book, writing a book called "The Deceptions of Gods and Men," and I was working with a Scottish author as well and friend Brian Allen on this particular project, and and the book itself is being published next year. We got a publisher and signed off on it, and that will hit the market next year. This particular book is something of a different venture. This really examines possibly what we are dealing with behind the veil. What is hiding behind the veil that continually tries to give us the sleight of hand, almost gives us the impression of deception. Well, why? Why would something that pretends to be friendly and, for all intents and purposes, does nothing initially to give us any warrant of fear or anything, but ultimately, somewhere down the line, we tend to find that in a majority of cases, not all cases, but a majority, that we tend to find that what was coming through was not initially what it said it was.
Okay.
So that particular book, The Deceptions of Gods and Men, really delves into this aspect of this common thread that weaves its way through not only the world of the paranormal, but also ufology and cryptozoology, um, and, uh, and looks at various different experiments from around the world that have been happening, and seeing what they have been encountering. And because they were very singular within their nature, they weren't very practiced looking at the greater picture, in which we see other experiments that were also happening in other continents
Hmm.
that possibly had no connection with that, but we're seeing the same phenomena appear. And that was a real curiosity for me to see, well, what is this? What can we learn from this? And when we start peeling the onion layers away from it, and we start delving right into it, we start seeing a different picture. And the book itself, it challenges the reader, it challenges our perception of what we think this world is,
Right.
but ultimately it gives us that grounding to challenge what is beyond the veil. And that was of great importance to me, to help us guide our way through this, to say, okay, folks, you're having this experience from whatever avenue. Let's look at it and break it down. Where do we see the common factors here? And when we start seeing the common factors and start tracing it by the way, rather the way it interacts with us, rather than the perception that we have of the actual being or entity. And when we move that mask away and track it by the phenomena, that's whenever we really get onto its coattails and start tracking it back into history, and away back into history. And that has been an absolute wild experience, very challenging, even for me as I would like to think. I'm a free thinker and pretty balanced. Yet it even challenged me. It made me very uncomfortable. See that what I had thought these things were not, and that really shook me a bit. But from that, we have learned, and I'm now delving and working into the next project, which is the Fruit of the Gods, which we spoke about before we went
Right.
live there, and that is a phenomenal series of research that I certainly didn't think I was going to be on.
That's another one that I can't wait to read. And I've read most of Barry's books. They're all outstanding, the ones I've read. And they cover different topics in a lot of ways, and they're great. But I think this is the one that's challenged me the most in a good way. And I'm going to have to go back and reread it again. I took my time reading it, and I'm going to have to reread it again to spend more time letting it sink in and exploring in my head, because just about every line or two made me think. And that's a wonderful way to read a book. That's what I like, but it's not a way to fast read a book to get ready for an interview.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's incredible, and it's very different than I think any of the other work of yours that I've read. I mean, topics.
Oh, by far.
So differently. Yeah.
And grossly different. And I think in itself, it's maturing in where I come from to where I am now, and I'm very cognizant within the book as I was writing the book, that along with Brian, that where's the information coming from? A lot of the stuff that I was putting forward, normally I would not. Those are areas I would not be stumbling into. Yet this information was being presented almost, and it really made me question: where is this coming from? Where's whose side am I on? And do I want to be on a side? That's another question. And because
Exactly.
within the book, the Deceptions of Gods and Men, it really does expose this nature, these beings beyond the veil that have their own agenda going on, and we're caught in the middle.
Right.
The problem for us is that we don't know which is good and which is bad. In fact, they're pretty much the same thing, but we're caught in this, I suppose, scale in the middle, and that has presented so many problems because we can be easily deceived,
Right.
And we know how they are deceiving us.
And we as a species are both good and bad too. I mean, you talk about shadow and in the book a lot, and some of that being other and some of that being us. And it's true. I've spent a lot of years in therapy working on shadow, but I mean, a lot, but it's related. It's very related.
I think whenever we sit back after the readers read the book, they'll sit back and think about what the mainstream media have led us down the road to think what these beings were. And we switch on a television, or go onto the internet and we have depictions of these beings all the time. But where do they originate from? Where was the original spark? And when we track that back in the book, we find that their origins are very, very close by. And we really have to hold our hands up and say, folks, this is not what we thought it was, and be prepared, because it'll go very, very dark very quick. So that in itself, from my perspective, to really that, and there were many months where I had to go into myself and question where I was coming from, and take those mountain roads where no one else was around, and just walk and just filter through the information that I had, and try and break it down and understand, and also see what our ancestors had left us behind, the clue that they had left for us to identify what these things were. And when we do that, we see that this aspect, this component of the three, which we see right around the world, that this particular component of three is also found within us, and is a very, very close part of us, which is, again, directly related to the phenomena which is beyond the veil.
Yeah. Let's see. This is Anna's question. You can see it all right.
Yeah. Was there a particular incident? I think, Anna, whenever I was in the United States, we were visiting a lecture in the desert in California, and I was aware that there were some presenters there, that are speakers there, that have their own way of calling in UFOs and everything else. And it was very, the particular weekend was dedicated to UFOs and paranormal and everything else. A place where you would expect to find me. But I watched one particular evening at the event where people sat in a circle and they meditated, and they looked up and they seen these lights passing over by, and clearly it was satellite, but they got very, very excited, and I could understand they were in a group and everything else. But I knew from my own research that the place that we needed to be was 7 miles out of town in the high desert. Mm-hmm. So we took 3 cars, and there was a small group of us headed up into the high desert, and that's where we had our encounter. Now, our encounter was very different to what was being held or being witnessed down in the valley below, because the people that I had with me, they had the cameras out and everything else. Now, bear in mind, this particular phenomena that we're hunting does not like cameras. We see that right across the board. When you bring a camera out, they're gone. Mm-hmm. And there are particular reasons for that. I may come back on that as to why this phenomena does not like cameras. But I told the people at that particular time, and by this stage it was dark, and I told them, put your cameras away. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the last camera went into the bag, the hair went up in the back of my neck, and I said, they're here. And right above the car, there was this huge light appeared. And it just went boom, 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 boom. It was like a welder's flash. Boom, 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 boom. And the communication went on for around 90 seconds before it finally left. It was gone. Mm-hmm. But the moment that finished, I told the folks, get back into the cars, we're leaving. Now, at that particular moment in time, they didn't understand why. One of the women that was there said they had often heard tell of this phenomena, but they often thought that it was just make believe.
Hmm.
For them, they were fine seeing this, and it was absolutely amazing. Why are we leaving? I said, we have to go now.
Right.
Not understanding, because I was listening to the signals that were coming through the body. And this is part of the phenomena in which we have to understand when dealing with all sorts of paranormal phenomena. We need to listen to our instinct.
Yes.
And my
I think that's
instinct
part.
was telling me, we need to leave, because
Right.
what we were hoping to encounter was already on the ground. That ball of light is the piece of the instrument that locks the conscious brain. We're transfixed on the physical aspect, not understanding that they're already on the ground. So
Right.
once they have the conscious brain hooked, we're not listening to the instinct. The instinct is switched off. My instinct was not switched off. It was telling me to leave.
Hmm.
And so I had to go through part of that particular phenomenon with her. And as we were driving off, I said, did you enjoy that? Yes. Did the hair go up in the back of your neck? Yes. Did you feel the adrenaline rush through your body? Yes. Said, that's your instinct. That's your fight or flight. It's telling you to get ready to run. Why?
Right.
Why is your body reacting in such a way to something which you assumed was very positive? You got hooked through the conscious brain, and you refuse to listen to that subtle instinct which tells you to get out of dodge. So that was a wake up call for her when
Hmm.
dealing with this particular phenomenon.
Well, I think it's a
So
wake
that
up
that
call.
probably. Mhm.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to
I,
say, I think it's a wake up call that goes back so long too, because I think we're built in with that. Yeah, I call it a psychic ability, and it's part of what kept
yes.
us from getting eaten by saber-toothed tigers. We're smart, but we're not the big
Mhm.
powerful being on the planet as far as physical. We need to have
Mhm.
something built into us that can help us
Yes.
maneuver the world around us, I think, and the dangers around
And
us.
yeah, and I definitely think that the Deceptions of Gods and Men really delves into that, because it looks at this aspect of shadow,
Right.
which is designed, and this aspect of shadow, it's in its best interests to keep the body alive in which it inhabits as long as possible,
Hmm.
so that the spirit can have that experience. So we have a trinity of three going on within us. But we have to understand that our aspect of the instinct, of our aspect of tapping into the great global, some people will call it the global consciousness, is actually the seat of the shadow. And when we have people who have encounters with extreme paranormal encounters, some people within ufology, of course, would have aspects of abduction or a
Right.
UFO encounter in which they come face to face with these particular beings, which is the beings that we're hunting. Again, it's another mask. But because the experience is so extreme, it's the shadow that's stepping up to the box that gives us that boost. A lot of people after their experience will start to have prophetic components, prophetic abilities will start to develop from that experience, and they think it's a gift. That is not a gift. That is part of the shadow making sure that you do not fall into that incident again. It's a way of protecting us. It's our own system stepping
Right.
forward and boosting itself so that we can sidestep possibly something that's further down the line. So those abilities, that psychic aspect of us, I believe, is part of our shadow, to keep the body alive as long as possible, because it certainly does not want to go back to where it came from, which we
Right.
discussed in the book.
Yeah. Now, one of the things too that's been interesting in the book, you talked about soul pretty much. You defined that pretty well, but I wasn't quite sure how you were defining spirit. A lot of times that's used, like in the Catholic Church, the spirit would be the Holy Spirit, which gave life to the physical animation and the soul of the being. And I don't know if that's what you're meaning or if there's something else in there.
I have to say that the aspect of the spirit I didn't delve into too much within the book, William. And the reason for that is because my interest was within the shadow. It was to
Okay.
understand the shadow and where the nature of the shadow and what it was doing and what it was designed to do. Because when we go and we look at this component of for those of us that have that ability to commune and with these particular beings, these entities, we may think that they are the spirits of the deceased, but this is something that I define in the book. In that the moment death occurs, the spirit is gone.
Right.
It is gone to where it needs to go. Now, where that is, I have no idea. But what I do know is that, and what I theorize, is that every time that we have a communication with something beyond the veil, it is from the shadow. The shadow has access to every life that lived, every memory that was lived, every experience. And it's the shadow that we are tapping into. It's the shadow that comes forward and sometimes, more times than not, deceives us into thinking it's one thing when it's something completely different. There are reasons for that. I'll not get into that now. But
Yeah.
Every time I believe that we're communing with something, it is of shadow. It originates from shadow. And ultimately, we have to realize that originates from us. It was originally part of us. It continues to be part of us. Now, what happens in the future? Maybe in the near future, I've been watching some things occur and develop that are talking about separating us from this aspect of spirit, they're calling it. And I'm concerned about that because within the modern sense of today, we find that spirit and soul is an interchangeable term, because it's all the same thing. It is not.
Right.
And this is something that we delve into within the book as well, and we categorize and state the differences between the shadow and the spirit. And a lot of the clues that we have from that come from our Nordic heritage here in Ireland, and of course, we tend to have a lot of that bloodline come back through Ireland, and in fact, my own DNA, I believe, is 26% Viking and Nordic. Ooh. Scandinavian, okay. Where I think it's 56% Celtic, which is not bad either. No. But anyhow, the information that we have was coming down through the Nordic line, and from a time which was pre-Christian. It was a time before the Vikings came to Ireland. So they were having this experience up in the Nordic countries as well, which is something that really came through Ireland from the Middle East, which, again, is something that we tap into in the next book that I'm working on at the moment.
Right. Plus, there was trade with the Middle East. I mean, it looks like going back to Neolithic times. There was trade up and down the Mediterranean.
That's right.
So we think of these cultures and these peoples as being isolated, but they weren't. They knew how to get around all over.
Oh, they did. Yeah, very much so.
And they would teach each other, and ideas would transfer from one to the other. It's
very
one
easily.
Of the fascinating things that I like about history is studying how that works.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I've been fascinated by this aspect. Again, we tend to have commonalities within the phenomena that strays right around the planet,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing this ancient signal to it. And I do know of some very, very famous ufologists, and one of which in particular I was horrified to hear by saying that we shouldn't use mythology. We should do away with mythology because it's racist to them. And I thought, wait a minute, it's the mythology and the folklore that has allowed us to track them to this particular point. If we do away with that, we are left completely blinded. We no longer can find them in history. And we have to understand it under a bigger term, a bigger umbrella, and see how they have influenced our history, how they have influenced us, and how we have allowed that to happen, of course.
And also help to determine what could be them and what could be simply a way of earlier people creating a story to explain what they don't have the science to explain. Because I know that's been part of
Very much
the
so. Yeah.
development of myth and also religion. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you look at the early scripts and Mesopotamian, but also Old Testament. There's a dome around the world, and the waters are separated above and below, and it makes me wonder how we're getting rockets up to Mars or something if we've got this glass dome there. But and there are people that still believe that literally in the Christian sects.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's an important piece for us to look at. Oh, here's something from Vivian
It
too.
is.
Yeah.
Investigators seeking information. Do you not think? Oh, it's gone.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're what about
Not think as a collective, our own subconscious minds manifest the thing that this group. Now, here's the thing. In regards to, we believe that our own subconscious minds. This is an ability again awarded to shadow. So it's in its aspect. It's a modern belief that is our subconscious that is creating this incident. That is not the ability of psychic projection, the ability of remote viewing and prophetic dreams. All of this is an ability of shadow. Shadow is part of us, but shadow also has access to the global consciousness. So it's through the shadow we link to the global consciousness. It's not us per se, because us, when we consider us in a modern sense, it's this. It's
Right.
this. And that in itself, we have to drop. We have to let that go and realize that there is a component within us that connects. It can be useful to connect, and it will. The component that is in us that does this, when there is a balance created, it can be very, very effective. But we have to be aware. We have to be aware that there are other shadow out there determined to get in, and that can create a problem. When we walk into a haunted property, for instance, and oh, the hairs goes up in our back of our necks and all the rest, and we think, oh, there's something here. That's our shadow indicating to us in that nature that there's another shadow here. So you're being warned that there's another shadow in the vicinity, to be aware. So again, those are all components of the shadow, and it can be very, very beneficial to us, but we have to be careful when dealing with it.
And so the shadow that we're being made aware of is part of the soul of that person whose shadow it is we're coming into contact with, if it's a shadow from another living being instead of a shadow from another, a fae, or there are all kinds of words to describe them.
Well, you see, that's the thing. We really have to work on it to establish where that actually comes from. And the problem is, William, that when we start to put the thumb screws on those particular shadows, they retract. They get out of there because they're not banged. Suddenly you're not, wait a minute, you're telling me you're a great Uncle Buck, but that doesn't match up. And the moment that you start questioning, it's gone.
Right.
And because its identity does not want to be known. How can we tell the difference between the different types of shadow? That in itself comes to telling the difference. We have to strip away all the masks and perceptions that we believe the things to be, and understand that it comes from one source. So when we understand that it comes from one source, then we have to understand, well, why is it coming through and displaying itself as this? And you have to work through that. And if it is there for your ultimate benefit, it will work with you. But as sure as there's a sunrise every day, that more times than not, they will not work with you, because you have to keep your own guard up. You have to keep your own defenses, and you have to secure your own shadow. You have to make sure that you are okay. Otherwise, that can be a road to wreck and ruin. And I'm not talking about. I hate using, and I haven't for a long time been using terms such as little grey aliens or fairies or demons or anything like that, because again, it's all about masks, and there's some masks that we create, and there's some masks that they create. We have the ability to create archetypes, and that can be a problem as well. The biggest problem that we have is not understanding their identity, is understanding the difference between, is this one we created, or is this one from beyond the veil?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And we would also then need to be very careful not to make sure we don't let them into our physical body as well.
By far, yeah.
I'm thinking trance mediums, and such like that.
It can be a problem, William, especially when you consider that if you're giving yourself over to this particular phenomena, you have to have a certain level of trust.
Right.
And from the word go, if something portrays itself as being one thing and you get wind of something that isn't quite right, why would you even open the door to allow this in? And yet I know of some folks that do. And that to me screams, we should not be doing this. Yeah. If there's no trust there, no, not at all. In fact, our own shadow is exceptionally good at, if we listen to it, it's exceptionally good at what it does. That's what it's designed to do.
Right.
And
I think it's so easy. I know in my own case, a lot of times it can be easy for me to think I'm listening to it, where what's really happening is my head is telling me what I want to know or hear, and it's not.
Yeah.
And I have to work hard at making sure I'm listening, not creating. Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so.
From Vivian, not just trust, but love as well.
Yeah, love is definitely part of it. And believe me, sometimes I can get absolutely very annoyed when something its identity is brought forth and it's not what it said it was. And when you go to town on that, then it's gone. And before I happened to touch on aspect that why this phenomena, when there are cameras around, why does it stay away? And this is something that I experienced here on the hills of Ireland when I was I was really researching this area known for fairy activity.
Oh,
And so the camera itself was showing me a difference in what I was actually seeing. And I was seeing two people walking away from me, but the camera only saw one. And that, to me, then the realization occurred to me that the camera cannot lie. And this is something that Jacques Vallée, the great UFO researcher from France, also experienced as well, in that what we're seeing is not what is truly there a lot of the time. So when a camera comes out, the camera displays what's really there, not what they are. So that creates a problem. And that when we start chipping away at the deception, shoo, they're gone. And that, that spins when researching. Because if something means no harm to you, then it should have no problem in coming forward and doing what it does without hopefully creating any obstacle. And where there are others that simply don't want to be filmed because they're not what they said they were.
right. Now, I had an experience where I saw Bigfoot, and I'm still looking to see what else it could have been. I've had my own theories about them being interdimensional, mostly because of my own contact with them. Be it legitimate, be it a fake shadow figure, I'm not sure. Be it my eyes playing a trick on me that I haven't been able to work out yet. This was several years ago, and I'm still trying to go through and see if it could be something other than the straightforward. But one of the things that became clear to me, doing this and trying to make contact with the area, this isn't an area known for UFOs and Bigfoot, was that they don't want any proof of themselves because no good follows man. It's a protection from them, not for us to not have a good picture, not to have DNA, not to really have clear footprints or anything that gives real proof. And then could that be one of, for the shadow that isn't in our worst interest, could that be part of the shyness of cameras from the other shadow, do you think?
I definitely think it's a connection to, again, we're getting back into the conscious connection, because when even if we decide to hide a camera, a lot of the times these things know. They know that there's a camera there. Well, how do they know? Now, granted, a lot of them will explore the territory at night and no doubt have amazing nighttime vision. And of course, we're coming in there with IR cameras, which the beam would be seen by something that's sensitive to the infrared, would be seen miles away. So we really do have to consider that and look at our technology as well. But there is a conscious connection here with these particular beings. Now, I don't tend to have that connection with Bigfoot like you guys have. We do have some similar phenomena here, but they want to be interacting with us. And this is a strange one, and our friends there in Washington and in Washington State, and he had an experience, and he had to take a boat to this particular area, and when he went there, he had his encounter, and he said, "Barry, these things are not what we think they are," and his encounter left him in bed for 2 days.
Oh, no.
And it was a very, very extreme experience that he occurred. And that in itself came through the yell that it presented, the scream. Now we do know that they use a language, and that language from the Sierra Nevada recordings would indicate to us that the Bigfoot itself speak in frequencies above and below the human capabilities. But to communicate with us, they narrow their speech, their frequency range. They narrow it to communicate with us. Usually, it's in a way because they're giving out to us because we're in their territory. So it sounds very much like chatter. It's like, you can hear someone speak, but you don't know what they're saying. But these recordings were analyzed, and it would seem from the specialists that these things have a language of their own. Now, are they shadow? I would need to delve more into those particular areas, and probably have my own encounters. And that's one thing that I find whenever I'm writing the book, and writing or getting involved with various different aspects of research, that I have to put my own neck on the line to experience it, so that I can break that experience down. Because there's a lot within the experiences that are written from other folks, that for whatever reason there are certain details possibly that have fallen to the wayside, which in itself could be exceptionally important, to understand the encounter. So to have that encounter myself, that would be a big thing. I don't think anytime soon that I'll be leaving this fair green island of mine.
That's a problem, I know, for a lot of people. And that makes sense. I'm one of these people that even if I'm hearing it from people I trust, for me to know something is really real, I have to see it. I mean, I do the work I do because I've seen it, I've experienced, I've had tactile interactions. And somebody I don't know telling me a story, I might even believe that they believe it, but that doesn't mean their interpretation is correct or whatever else it is. So, yeah, I mean, just as far as actually understanding it, but even knowing it's a real experience, I have to put my neck out there too. And I want to learn. I want to know. I want to be safe about it, but I'd like to know what's out there. And I know that
even, I have to say, even from my experiences with the nighttime attacks, I could go through all the different literature and everything else to look at sleep paralysis and the hallucinations and sleep paralysis and everything else, and say that's all it is. It's just sleep paralysis.
Right.
But I had my own experiences, and from those experiences with night attacks, I was able to break the encounter down, and I was able to see then through the work that extended for several years after that these particular things tend to attack women more so than men, and especially at a time when they enter their monthly cycle, when a lot of them become anemic. Iron was the key. When the iron levels fell, that's whenever the door opened to allow these attacks to happen. What was it about iron? What was it that our ancestors knew very much so about iron that kept the evil eye away, that kept the fairies away? Again, we're starting to look at the same phenomena under a different mask. What is it about iron that keeps the greys away? Why would the greys be annoyed about someone wearing iron around their neck? The same way the fairies did, the same way the demons did. Same phenomena, different mask.
Right. And you wrote about that in one of your earlier books. I mean, some of that.
That's right.
Reading. Not as developed as what you're talking about here with the masks, but I can't remember which one, but it was a good one. Let's see, we've got a couple more comments or questions.
Anna, my recommendation would be to walk. It's something that we rarely do these days, and when we do, we stick music into our ears. Get back into nature. Pick some time to walk. And it's within the aspect of walking that we reconnect. And it's a strange thing about the way it happens. And I don't mean jogging and things like that. When you start going over a certain threshold, then you start switching off the brain, and the conscious brain comes in to understand the targets that you need to hit and what you're doing, and the terrain and everything around you. Just the simple walk through nature is all you need repetitively to connect back into it and start listening. And then you'll start connecting to your shadow, and then you'll start having insight. And that's the start of it. Walking is the way we need to go. Be very, very careful of those refined sugars. Refined sugar has a way of switching off our body's response to shadow. So that can be a real problem. Getting back to walking, very, very good. Simple.
Now,
it really is a simple thing.
do you think meditation can help as well?
Meditation is very important. Yes. Meditation and walking. Walking in itself is when you get your rhythm in the walk. And whenever I say walk, I don't mean that you're there with friends and you're having a conversation. No, this is something that you're going to do alone, and it's your walk. It's your connection back. So you don't want those distractions of communication and all the rest. And there's one thing about, I have to say, about meditation as well. You need to find somewhere that's quiet. And the one thing that will bring us out of a deep meditation is speech. Human speech in another room can bring us back like that. So, and it's the way the brain is set up to do. So you need to find somewhere that's quiet, away from extraneous noises, and that will work great.
Great. So she will try. And I know Anna, and I know where she lives, and in England, and she's got lots of beautiful scenery to walk around in that she can do safely. I live in the city most of my life. I don't walk at night by myself in places where there aren't crowds of people to come to my aid when somebody behind the tree attacks me. I know that's crazy, but that's living in the States.
Yeah.
And this is from Vivian.
Simply Spooky she's asked, could it be that they're afraid of us? There is a huge part of that, Viv, that we underestimate the power that we possess. And this is something that I wrote about in the book, in that it has even been stated back in the medieval periods that when a body is balanced, even the demons are afraid of it. They're afraid of our shadow, of our soul, because a strong soul will defend us to the end. And that is exceptionally powerful. It's an exceptionally powerful thing to do and to have. And we all have it. It's just we don't listen to it. So, yes, are they afraid of us? Oh, you can be sure, especially when you realize what you're dealing with. And they are afraid. But they have different ways of working, and that in itself is discussed in the book, and it shows the connection with modern age and how some individuals within our modern living have come to use this connection for their own ends and benefits. Sadly, I think we're seeing part of that now. It is. Watch out for the book whenever it's coming out. I gotta say, The Deceptions of Gods and Men, that should be out next year.
Yeah, and when I hear that it's out, I'll certainly be sharing it and posting it. Is there a website or something where people can get a hold of what you have done? You've got some incredible videos out there that
Thank you.
As projects. I always learn a lot from them.
There is the Legend Seekers on YouTube. That's where folks can see the videos, and if they wish to have a read at some of the books or see what's going on, sometimes in my own life, they can pop over to my website, which is charmstealer.com, and there's a list of the books that are available, and some other discussion points about some observations that I've made and everything else. And it is quite often that you would find me in a cave system or something like that, exploring and seeing what connection we have to archaeology that they were possibly using the cave system for, and how acoustics plays a part in that, and how acoustics connects to the body and everything. I was in
What's the website
church.
again? I'm sorry. I
Charm Stealer. You're okay. Charmstealer.com.
Okay.
And it's interesting to see how audio archaeology or acoustical archaeology is now something which is coming to the forefront, and understanding a lot of the ancient temples and sacred areas that were being used. And a lot of them were connected to this aspect of the underworld. And when I say underworld, I don't mean under our feet. I mean beyond the veil. This place of darkness. What was it? How were they accessing it? And the heritage. This is something I want to quickly touch on, William. The heritage of these beings is now coming clouded with our own technology, especially when we're looking at ufology. Now we switch on the news, and ufology is all over the news with Tic Tacs and everything else. But forget all that particular stuff, because a lot of that is our own technology, and there's been a lot of money posted to those black budgets. And I assure you, they're working very well. But what I wanted to talk about this evening was a lot of our technology now surpasses theirs that is coming through the veil. But some of that stuff we can still see today within our skies, and part of this comes from this photograph, which was taken by Marian Rupnik, who was a NASA astronomer. And just hold it up to the camera so that you can see it. And this was a photograph that was taken on New Year's Day in a McDonald's in California, where he spotted 4 objects in the sky, which you see there. Now, one of the objects seemed to be having some problems, and the others were coming back, flying around it. When he zoomed in on his camera, you can actually see the hull plates on these things, whatever they are. But this is where it gets really interesting, because of the colors that they were presenting. These things were burning a particular color. One of them was orange, which I tend to call the amber gamblers, and they were orange, and then there was a blue, but there was also a green. Now, when we go and we look at the metal tables, we see that when a metal is burned, it portrays a different color, or it gives a color when we burn the metal. And this in itself, we see this connection back to the fairy, for instance, because orange, when burned, comes from strontium, or strontium. Strontium was first discovered in Scotland under a hill that was known as the nose. I believe it was the nose of the fairy. Again, we're seeing an association with activity and entities connected with the ancient historical place, and also the connection to the metal. Now, when we go in and we look at the others, you will see the orange was strontium when burned, the other was copper, and the other one was barium nitrate.
Okay.
The green was barium nitrate. Now, I'm going to bring you back to the book that you read, The Deceptions of Gods and Men. You remember the case in Scotland, in Italy, which we opened with, in which these particular beings were asking for industrial amounts of strontium and barium nitrate. Why? Why are we seeing these colors within their craft when they're flying? The metals which originate on this planet, not on another one. So it would certainly suggest that they've been here for a very, very long time.
Yeah. Could it be that those metals do exist in other places? Or are they particular to the formation
Well, you
of our
see,
planet?
whenever Jacques Vallée, again, he went back and he looked at this aspect of the chain of evidence, and from metal components that came off or were dispersed from the craft whenever they were flying over. And interestingly enough, whenever they were tested in reputable laboratory settings,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a key point, because we have chain of evidence, which is something that Jacques Vallée talks about all the time. We find that the metal that was dropped out of these particular things contained magnesium, strontium, calcium, iron, zinc, titanium, tin, tungsten, carbide and cobalt, aluminum, sulfur, iron, nickel, carbon steel, silicon, manganese, chromium, and carbon. All components found on this planet, not
Periodic table.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Half of the periodic table, and those are components that are found here. Now, one thing that they did notice is that some of the samples that were collected had a different isotopic ratio, which would mean that it probably wasn't mixed here.
Okay.
But certainly all of those components are available here.
Right.
So again, it's just another sample of to support the idea that they've always been and have been for a very, very long time, and they're not coming from Mars.
No, I don't think so either. It's interesting for them. I've seen a flying saucer once, the UFO, and I have no idea, unidentified, and it was up close and huge and round and all the multicolored lights. And my parents used to have property for recreation on a river nearby that I found out a couple of years ago is noted for UFO and Bigfoot and that kind of thing. I didn't know at the time. And a friend of mine and I used to go out there just to get away from people and talk. And we saw it go down by a hill nearby, and almost went to go look for it because we thought we might be able to find it. And then we thought, oh, what happens if we do find it? We decided to go home. And I'm very grateful for that decision. But, where did it come from? I don't know. I know I saw something, and I don't know if our government made it, if the Russians made it, if it came from another dimension or another, interdimensional type, interuniversal type things. I don't know. It's unidentified.
Yeah.
It was there. And,
it is, and I was again, I was speaking to Jacques, and he was talking about a case that he was involved with back in the 70s, and it was a young lad who had gone out to bring in the horses or bring out the horses, one was the other, in the morning. It was very early in the morning before he went to school in Brazil, and as he was riding the horse, this UFO flew over his head, buzzed him, and then landed in the field.
Wow.
And he went up and he went into it, and he had his encounter. It was a very, very extreme encounter for him. It took him a long time to deal with the outcome of that. But what I was interested in, which was something I continually asked Jacques about, what were the reactions of the horse? What did the horse do? The horse eventually had to be shot because it went blind after the encounter. But the horse was agitated. It was exceptionally agitated. And that is very, very telling. Because the animal, of course, is working on base instincts. It's connected to that shadow, and the shadow is telling it, get the hell out of here. But of course, from a human aspect, our conscious brain gets hooked, and we go, oh, what's this? and off we go up the yellow brick road. And there were other encounters. There was one I'm aware of this young lass in Scotland, and she was having this encounter on the top of her apartment block, and these beings came in through the window, and she was paralyzed on the bed. She couldn't move, and she had this remarkable experience, and was telling everyone about it. That was great, but I had to critique her after what she told us, because she thought it was funny that the cat that was sitting on the bed beside her had it urinated on the bed, and she thought this was funny. And I said, "You're missing the point here. The cat was afraid.
Yes.
That is what your instinct should have been telling you. Instead, you were linked through the conscious brain. You were hooked. And the moment they hook you, that's it." And the cat responded. That should have been the clue.
Yeah. Yeah. I just.
Vivian, I do believe that hauntings, UFO sightings, and Bigfoot, there is a common thread that weaves through it all. And the book itself delves into that and explores it further. It really strips it apart and exposes it for what it is. And it also exposes a lot of things that we call on for help. And we find out that they're not, again, what we thought they were. They're an archetype that we created. If we're calling that in for help, then we really need to question where we're going. We need to understand where this stuff is all coming from. But yes, there is a connection between them all, Vivian, and that's something which is discussed in the book.
Great. Okay, I don't see anybody else's comments right now. This, I have to go back and reread the book, but a lot of this too in the conversation today, I need to do some sitting and listening and re-explore my own connections and contacts with a lot of what I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're putting it in a different light that I'm appreciative of. I hope I don't sound like I'm saying anything negative, because what you've been putting out is fascinating, and it makes a lot of sense. It makes sense from my own experience, which to me is important. And it makes sense with the archaeology in a lot of ways too. One of the things, though, I'm wondering, in some of these places, like with oracles and such, which did people start using the place because of physical phenomena that made it easier for them to put on the show? Or did they use the place because of the connection already for people? And also, are in some of those places, did humans create the spiritual aspect of the show or of the place? An example, I was at a monastery nearby here. I used to go to quite a bit, actually. And I talked to my spiritual director about, it was like a gate. I saw a white smoke pillar go up and then over and down across their long driveway. And I knew not to go on the other side of it. I was safe here, not over there. And I saw some strange things running around on the other side. And he said, well, we've been here for 50 years. We have 50 years of people praying together and creating a sacred space. And that creates a barrier on its own. And these are Trappists. They were very legitimate, very, very spiritual people, and very open-minded people.
I think on that particular aspect, there in itself was a perfect example of creating an archetype. So they created this aspect of safety for them, and it was interesting that when I went back and started looking at the research and started seeing that there were areas that our ancestors were using, which were areas that had a thinness of the veil. Let's say it was an area where naturally it was able to be utilized from the other side to come through into this, and that certainly tended to be places that were hard to reach. Tops of mountains, way in the back end of nowhere, in cave systems, and whatever the case may be. There were always in places where, again, they were hard to reach, but there was also an aspect of our ancient heritage that also utilized some of these places, because there were some demands that were put in place by these things on the other side for sacrifice.
Okay.
And that sacrifice would have came in the point of animal, and on occasion there was also human sacrifice. And now what we see from today's research is that some of these areas still attracts a negative influence, if you like. 75% of the world's top suicide locations are found in these areas. So it seems that whatever this place was, it seems to attract that type of behavior. But that also there are other areas in there as well. You know, the research continued, and no doubt you're very well aware that I could roll on to the modern day and where the blood rituals have gone now, but I shan't go there this evening. But
that could be
it is very very interesting to see this particular connection, and to see that there are areas, and still are areas, on our landscape that have that particular type of activity naturally, and then enhanced structurally. And the likes of the passage chambers here in Ireland is easily reflected from the bird's eye view of the Celtic cross layout, right. And that in itself was a resonance chamber. And I believe there was a university in the US, I just can't remember the name offhand, but they did some research in Ireland and discovered that a lot of the passage chambers in Ireland were tuned to 110 hertz, which does have some influence within the brain psyche. But I have to say, after visiting, I don't know if you've ever experienced this type of acoustical experience within some of these places, but there was a Templar church that I was visiting in Scotland, okay. And no one else was around us. So unlike there's another very famous church there in Scotland that was meant to hold the Ark of the Covenant. I can't remember the name of it, but this particular church, no one was around except for the caretaker. And he said, I said to him, would you mind if I played some music in here just to see what the experience was like? He says, yeah, work away. And he left. And we were left with the three arches within this massive Templar church. And the first arch, nothing. And the second arch, we put in the resonance speaker, nothing. But the third arch was our bingo hit. And I can tell you, when the architecture reflects back what you're putting out, it's like walking into a waterfall. That's the only way I can let you know what it feels like. It's like suddenly you step through into this flow of energy being reflected up and down and up and down. It's an amazing experience. These massive resonance chambers, of course, fell into disrepute in Ireland, and the secrets of them were certainly held by the Celtic Christians, who were themselves, of course, Druids.
Right.
But the Jesuits in Ireland, and was the end of it. That the Celtic Church died, because we were not held accountable by Rome, and Rome wanted control. And it was interesting that that our place of oracle here in Ireland, and it was a place that they came from all over medieval Europe to visit, a very, again, remote island, in the back end of nowhere, which was very difficult to reach, still is today.
Uh-huh.
And they shut it down and destroyed this passage chamber that was on it. And interestingly, that when they did that, they began building the new basilica in Rome, which is designed as a massive passage chamber, which is a resonance chamber, which is also pointing eastward, and connected very much to sun worship, and everything else that goes with it.
Right. Only with the church, they say you're facing eastward because of Christ in Jerusalem. When
Of course,
it's
of
yeah.
course.
Well, everything. I mean, Christmas Day is the sun god's birthday. I mean, it's
Yeah,
about the
yeah,
time the sun starts showing it's being around longer. So, um,
yeah, yeah.
it's fascinating. One of the theories I read is that religion was a vital piece of creating cities and towns, anything in civilizations, because you had to have some kind of a unifying identity to loop a group of people who weren't family together. And that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Hmm.
it makes sense that all of these have been created in a way as a power source, sometimes using what's already there naturally, and
Of course, yeah,
sometimes
and that was
creating.
something yeah, that was definitely something we saw in Mesopotamia. The gods of that particular city, the protective gods would go up against other gods,
Mhm.
and wage wars against other cities and things like that.
Yeah.
That was a pretty typical. But it was interesting again, where we tend to see this movement of activity from these beings from behind the veil, because there are certain wall art that appear in Akkadian artwork, and are now in display in London, which show these massive winged creatures, and that are handing over particular components to the kings and the priests and everything else. And those migrated. They moved over the time period and developed into what we know as jinn, and of course, and the jinn morphed into the fae, and then the fae morphed into the greys. So we see this continual influence, background influence of these particular creatures, throughout history, on various different depictions. But yeah, it's been an absolute wonder to follow this. And my wife keeps telling me that I speak to people, as if I know, or as if they know what I'm talking about. And I have to be very cognizant of that, because she says you're so far ahead of the road that you expect everybody else to be there. So I'm aware that tonight, obviously, there's most of the time I've probably been talking gibberish, and no one understands what the hell I'm talking about. And so I have to be very aware of that.
Well, I find it fascinating, and I I think I'm understanding what you're saying. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not, but I think so. And the book really can help people get up to speed with that once it's out.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
you've always been, I mean, shoot, just casual conversation around the dinner table, you make me think. And so you challenge my brain, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I say that lovingly
Mm-hmm.
and as a
Mm-hmm.
positive. But are you going to do what I would like to see, and this is maybe a YouTube video coming out about this book, if not a follow-up, um, because there's so much more. I mean, the questions keep coming, and I agree with Vivian. Donna is amazing, but I want more. And I know your next
Mhm.
project is somewhat related, but it's different. And I want more
Yes.
on this. I want more depth. I want to get it, and some of that's up to me to travel on that road that you've already laid out. But I want some more of your understanding and what you've come up with, to help challenge, and help me to understand that road in a different way. Mhm.
Well, William, I've I've been marching in this road for decades now,
Right.
and where I'll end up, I have no idea. Hopefully, not in a mental institution. But I have to say it has been an experience. This next project, the Fruit of the Gods, as you say, it's a road that's taken me from the Middle East to Ireland, back to the Middle East, and it's absolutely phenomenal about what I'm encountering and understanding again what is behind the veil. We get there. How do we encounter these beings from beyond the veil? And that's the next step. That's where I am at now, is understanding how did they do it? How did our ancestors come in contact with these beings? And is there a specific time that we do make the contact? It seems that there is. Yeah, it's a wonderful experience. What comes out of it, I don't know. The research is continually changing, so
Right.
I'm very much like water. You just got to go with the current.
Yeah. Now, were you able to actually go to the Middle East to do some of the research?
Oh no, I haven't been. I would have loved to have gone to Syria and Iraq and Turkey, but
Right.
yeah, no, that ain't happening. Like never. So I just
Yeah.
have to do all my research through and even to get to London now is it's virtually impossible for me now.
Yeah.
So I have to do everything over the internet and communicate via email and telephone calls and everything else.
Hmm. Yeah. Hopefully things will open up. The Mesopotamian area is the cradle of the history that fascinates me the most. And I wish I could go. And I am going to, COVID permitting, I will be in Turkey again in October, end of September. But the history tour I'm taking, I know isn't going to the major sites I want to see, but I don't know how. I can't afford to hire what is needed to hire to get there on my own,
Yes,
because they are
yes,
close to
yes, yes.
they're close to borders, and they aren't always safe. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I don't think we're even going to get to go Becky Tepe, in which I've got my travel agent trying to figure out, and a friend of mine that lives in Izmir, trying to figure out a way that I can get there for a couple of days anyway,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it's
I hope I definitely hope it works out. I'm hearing in the pipeline that there's going to be more lockdowns coming.
oh boy.
Again, it's September, October, and I can certainly see the difficulty that people are having in trying to obtain flights from the United States to here. Never mind from here to the United States. It's just unbearable.
I wish they would open it up at least for people who are fully vaccinated. I know the EU's working on a electronic vaccine visa or something, and but which would help
They are,
me.
but yeah, I think from that particular standpoint, I think they're going to shut it down anyway. Um, so for whatever reason, they'll get
Yeah,
us. But anyway, that's a different video for another time, maybe.
that's true. That is. And this is from Vivian.
Yeah, Vivian, I remember. years ago, whenever we were communicating face to face in England, to have that gut instinct that something was coming, I would never have seen this. But what I can tell you is that it's not over yet, and we're only about halfway through, whatever that is. And I think it's because I don't want to know. I don't want to delve into it. I just see the change of the world and understand that the world that I grew up in is now dead. Um, it's a new world. And where that takes us, I have no idea. I don't want to know. I'm hiding from that for my own mental stability. And working my books and things.
Yeah. I get glimpses of what I think it might be, and I'm just glad that I'm older. So,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm past middle age. So, um,
Not long
it's
past.
interesting.
Not long past.
Oh, bless you. The Irish charm. uh, that's great.
But yeah.
Well, do you have anything else that you would like to put out to people? This has been fascinating, but we've gone on for an hour and 20 minutes. That's great. It's longer than I usually shoot for. But I want to make
I
sure
think I think
everybody.
William. And what I would like to know is to hear from folks who have had encounters with um, with what we would term UFOs or beings that were on the craft, or folks that had experiences, strange experiences on the ground with entities that they're unsure of, because those encounters, taking it from the horse's mouth per se, they may hold little nuggets, and on an accumulative factor, those little nuggets mount up, and again they help build that particular picture. So the more reports that I have, the greater the hammer that we can wield.
That makes sense. Now, can they get a hold of you through charmstealers.com?
They can, or they can reach out to my email. It's ghostuncovered@gmail.com.
Okay. Oh, I have it. Let me see. I think that's right. Cool. And I actually later today I'll get a hold of a friend of mine that lives not far from here who had he and his family, his brother and his mother all had this were part of the experience with a UFO and beings peeking in, and no abduction, but it was a very interesting and strange story, and he's somebody I trust not to make things up, you know.
It's a
Um,
it's a very strange thing, William, in that with this phenomena, a lot of it we tend to see is it has a lineage to it. In other words, it can skip a generation, but you can be more or less guaranteed that you will find it further down the family line the further back you go. You'll find that influence there somewhere, and following the family line. I have put a theory out there about time and beyond the veil, time works differently, and so
right.
it'd be much easier for them to keep on that family line. But yes, we definitely do see a continual repetitiveness within the family line. But those family line links can be broken, and a lot of people don't know that. There are ways to break that particular connection and to stop sometimes very horrific encounters. They can be stopped in their tracks.
Well, that would be
Um,
another interesting piece to
mm,
hear about, because there are people that really suffer.
there are, and I'm reminded as well that, well, do we enter a karma situation there if we reach out and help someone? Um,
Right.
and I say, karma be damned, I'll help them.
Well, and it's if we choose the existence we're born into or incarnated into, like a lot of people have said over the millennia.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then part of who we are, for you would be to help and the other person to go through that experience. But that doesn't mean getting help to get out of that experience isn't part of both of your paths. I mean, so yeah, I think it's perfectly okay to say karma be damned.
Yeah, well, there is a problem there as well, which again, these are things that go through my head whenever I'm out walking, and when you start entering into that, there can be difficulties, and even when you go to a property, and you bring an end to particular paranormal phenomena that may be happening there, it's only a matter of time before that particular phenomenon can return.
Right.
And that in itself is a reflection on that particular homeowner, because there comes a time where they have to take responsibility and they have to break that link.
Right.
Because a lot of times what we tend to see is that when that we try to force that link, that break, oh no, they come back, and they come back with more.
That's
And
right.
and that can be a problem, and really it's because they brought them back, and that is an issue. That connection that they have, really causes a situation. If the phenomenon is not dealt with pretty quickly, if it's allowed to continue over years, well, you have this connection that grows and grows and can be very, very difficult to break.
Yeah. And sometimes the connection is perfectly benign or very positive.
Yes.
Sometimes it's
Mhm.
sometimes it's not. I do not
Mhm.
work with clearing a space or whatever, partly because I've never known of one that they didn't come back with extras. And
Mhm. Mhm.
I also
Mhm.
then start
Mhm.
thinking, well, whose space is it really? And whatever. So
Yeah.
I help people get along with what's there if possible. And
Mhm.
I help
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
change the energy that they put into a space so that
Yeah.
whatever is there's energy might change into something more positive.
Mhm.
But
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I, I don't do the clearings and the cleansings and
Yeah,
stuff.
it can be very, very difficult. The symbiotic relationships can
Hmm.
be very divisive.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's where we are. So
Let,
that's that.
let's go ahead and close down the program then. Barry, I can't thank you enough. Please, anytime you've got something you want to be on, tell me, reach out. You've got my email. I think you've got my phone
I will
number.
indeed.
And
I have, yes. Mhm.
I really look forward to talking again soon. And my love to your wife. Donna's a sweetheart.
Thank you
And
very much. Thank you very much,
yeah,
William. And thanks for everybody watching. I really appreciate it.
yes. Okay. Good night, everybody.